Disability Research Project, Deafness and Hard of Hearing, by Jillian Calacino. Federal definition of deafness and hard of hearing. The federal definition of deafness is a hearing impairment that is so severe that the child is impaired in processing linguistic information through hearing, with or without amplification that adversely affects a child's educational performance. Being deaf means that a person cannot hear at all. There is no way to get this hearing back with devices or medication, such as a hearing aid. However, hard of hearing, or people with hearing impairments, is defined as an impairment of hearing, whether permanent or fluctuating, that adversely affects a child's educational performance, but that is not included under the definition of deafness. State definitions of deafness and hard of hearing. The New Jersey state definition of deafness is the auditory impairment that is so severe that the student is impaired in processing linguistic information through hearing, with or without amplification, and the student's educational performance is adversely affected. However, the New Jersey state definition for hard of hearing is an impairment in hearing, whether permanent or fluctuating, which adversely affects the student's educational performance. Diagnosing deafness or hard of hearing. There are different tests that are used to diagnose deafness or hearing impairments. Some of these tests include physical exams, general screening tests, which is when your doctor asks you to cover one ear at a time to see how well you can hear words spoken at various volumes, a tuning fork test, which can tell whether hearing loss is caused by damage to your eardrum, nerves, or both, or an audiometer test, which is a more thorough test that requires a person to wear headphones and listen to sounds directed at one ear at a time. During this test, a person must indicate whenever they hear a sound. Developmental characteristics of people with deafness or hard of hearing. Deaf people have significant cognitive delays because of their lack of access to communication. By not being able to hear the sounds around them and around their environment, they are missing important aspects about the world around them. However, even with some language delays, they are still able to learn about the world through visuals. In school, children with hearing impairments tend to be more followers than leaders, meaning they are never the head of their friend group and tend to just follow their friends and peers. In addition, sometimes the use of hearing aids make these children embarrassed in front of their peers because, like any child, they have a fear of rejection. Deaf people also can easily become frustrated if their needs are not met immediately, which can cause difficulties with their behavior. Deaf children have more trouble dealing with negative emotions than children who have their full hearing. These kids tend to be more angry or sad for long periods of time. This is because language is one of the central factors of a child's emotional development. These children have trouble communicating normally, which contributes to their emotions or their behavior. Deaf children tend to develop normally, minus developing a stronger hearing sense. Since the deaf cannot hear, it severely affects their communication. Communication is super important, especially for younger children. Their function in communication is strained because they are unable to communicate with people normally. They know how to use sign language or read lips, but not everyone knows how to understand sign language. Therefore, it is difficult for them to communicate with the people around them. Understanding deafness video. This video explains what it is like to be deaf in an easy-to-understand way. Strengths and weaknesses of deaf and hard of hearing people. Some strengths of the deaf and hard of hearing include making their other senses stronger. If a person is born deaf or loses their hearing, the area of the brain that focuses on and is devoted to hearing does not go to waste. It is reorganized to help the remaining senses, making them stronger. Another strength is that they are able to learn and speak using sign language. Sign language is defined as the language of deaf Americans that uses manual communication in the signal of deaf culture. Sign language is greatly used and appreciated through the deaf culture. Lastly, some people believe that deafness actually makes a person a better listener. These people think of communication as a tool rather than just an auditory experience. Weaknesses of being deaf or hard of hearing include things like not being able to hear the world around you, such as listening to birds singing, cars honking, or a dog's bark. Also, they are unable to see a movie or video without having subtitles, and they are unable to listen to music. In addition, deaf people have trouble communicating, meaning that it is very hard for them to communicate verbally. Strategies to benefit a child with deafness or hard of hearing. Since some students choose to read lips, it may be difficult for them to follow along with everything that the teacher says. So, in order to make it easier, it is important for a teacher to try and not talk too fast, and to keep instructions as brief and uncomplicated as possible. When teachers need to repeat instructions, they should make sure to repeat exactly what they originally said without paraphrasing. Another strategy for lip readers is to make round table arrangements. This way, the deaf student is able to see everyone at the table and have easy access to reading their lips. People who are deaf use vision as their primary way of receiving information. In the classroom, teachers should make sure they are using captioned videos, overheads, diagrams, and other visual aids to make instructions and lessons easier for the hearing impaired student. When in doubt about different accommodations for deaf students, teachers should talk to them in a private manner so that the child does not feel like they are being singled out or unnecessarily attention is brought to them. Resources to help teachers. A Teacher's Guide to Hearing and Disabilities and Learning. This is an extensive collection of resources that pertain to hearing loss within education, students who have hearing loss in a general education class, different teaching strategies, and some activities for teachers to use that include assistive devices. Mainstreaming the student who is deaf or hard of hearing. This collection of articles is a guide for teachers, professionals, and parents about dealing with and accommodating deaf students. Alexander Graham Bell, Associated for the Deaf or Hard of Hearing. This assists teachers and families, including healthcare providers, in understanding and coping with children who suffer from hearing loss. This offers worldwide support and encouragement to organizations around the world. American Sign Language University. This teaches American Sign Language, or ASL, to whoever wants to learn. It includes lessons, a dictionary, fingerspelling, as well as quizzes, charts, workbooks, and different ASL terminology. A speech pathologist. The speech pathologist that works at your school could also be helpful. These people treat children who have speech impairments and are a great resource for helping the deaf student and the teacher find a communication method. A day in the life of a deaf person. To finish up my research PowerPoint, this video shows what it is like to live a day in the deaf person's shoes and demonstrates what kind of scenarios they have encountered in their everyday life.